You really got to hand it to the Tennessee Titans for their 2019 season because you're talking about a team that could have went one or two ways with some of the early season struggles of Marcus Mariota and all the chaos and controversy he was creating around the quarterback position. It could be the type of thing that could really divide a team. It could really be the type of thing that brings a team down and ruins their season. It could be the type of thing that puts the wraps on you way earlier than it needs to. Now, the credit to Mike Vrabel being is eventually, I think it was in the Denver game, if I remember correctly, he made the call like, enough is enough. And to borrow from Owen Hart, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. And he went there, and he made the change, putting Ryan Tannehill at the helm of this Titans offense. And, it was there at that moment in time where the dynamic of this team shifted, the dynamic of this team changed. And the style that they played with on offense especially changed, like there was a concerted fundamental shift. It just went more smoothly. Now, it didn't translate to raging turnaround success, I don't think, in terms of the overall win-loss record. Finishing 9-7 isn't exactly lighting the world on fire, but it was the right move, made when it was needed, that certainly helped to get them into the playoffs. And once they got in, like a lot of people felt, this was a team that could make some noise and do some damage in the playoffs. You have a smart, experienced quarterback that, while he doesn't make a ton of big plays, he can make some plays when you need him, but most notably and importantly, will help the offense move consistently and is not going to shoot himself in the foot a bunch of times. You got this really powerful downhill running game with Derrick Henry behind a really good run blocking offensive line. A defense that could play well and make some big plays, get some key stops. Like the type of team that could go into those colder weather games in January and could be a problem for some folks. And they were. They absolutely lived up to the billing that so many people had. Like going into Foxborough and beating New England, like you could argue they were the dynasty killers. That was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Tom Brady being with the New England Patriots after 2 freaking decades. Like, it still feels funny to think of Tom Brady as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, but that's what we're getting in 2020. And I certainly think one part of the reason we're getting that is because the Titans smashed the Patriots, meaning they smashed Derrick Henry down their throats, and they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out how to stop him. Tannehill didn't make any big, huge mistakes. They made just enough plays, and they won. Then they go to Baltimore and they jump out early on the Ravens. And again, they can't stop Derrick Henry. He runs all over the place. And Tannehill makes a couple of key throws when needed. The types of throws he maybe wouldn't have had confidence that Marcus Mariota was going to be able to make. Or he had proved that he couldn't make. And all of a sudden you're talking about this Titans team now as a wild card team has went into the playoffs and won back-to-back road games. And not just against anybody, but against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the New England freaking Patriots. And then to do it against the 1 seed with the reigning league or the eventual league MVP of Lamar Jackson. Like, that's impressive stuff. And then they go into Kansas City against Patrick Mahomes, the previous season's MVP. And they go out there and they get an early lead up on them. And you're starting to wonder, like, hey, could history repeat itself? Unfortunately for them, that Chiefs offense was just too much. And the Chiefs defense, as I thought was going to happen at that time, was going to do a much better job on the ground stuffing Derrick Henry and making him less of a factor, making the play of Tannehill even more important. And when he couldn't quite measure up to Mahomes, and to be fair to him, who is, the Titans were in trouble. But you're talking about a team, wild card, that ended up making some noise and some big noise and getting some notable playoff victories. So all in all, not a bad season for this team at all. So it's not surprising they go into the offseason. They re-signed Ryan Tannehill. You had to see that coming. Like, I guess it's really hard to walk away from him, after what just happened, and you really don't have a viable option already on the roster. So you bring back Tannehill, re-sign Derrick Henry, which was almost going to be a given based off of the monster season that he had in 2019. In part, I think, by doing that, it put them in a position where they felt like they needed to trade away Jurrell Casey. It just feels weird. Like, to me, Jurrell Casey was always one of those criminally underrated players, even though he's been a multiple-time Pro Bowler. Like, from a national media attention standpoint, Jurrell Casey just, I don't think, ever got the love that he deserved while he was in Tennessee. We'll see where'd he go. Denver, maybe he'll get some there, but probably not. The big piece of news, though, lately for the Titans, obviously, is something that's been in the works, it seems like, for months, and it finally happened. Jadeveon Clowney finally signed on the dotted line. You got him for the next year. Congratulations. Enjoy the 7.5 sacks. A little joke there. Please forgive me. But, while they made some moves in the offseason, the core of the team that just went to the AFC Championship game remains relatively intact. And you add a Clowney into the mix, you feel like you get a little more ability to rush the passer from the edge. Maybe the Titans can make an argument that they've improved slightly on defense. When you look at the draft, they lost Jack Conklin in free agency, or I should say they let him go, which was a surprising decision to me. So they drafted Isaiah Wilson, the offensive tackle from Georgia. Now, if he can stay away from jumping off of balconies at campus parties, maybe he'll be okay. And he'll be the nice bookend tackle long term to Taylor Lewan, who plays on the left side. Then they addressed the secondary, which certainly needed to be addressed with Christian Fulton from LSU. And then in the third round, they got another speedy kind of compliment back to Derrick Henry and Darrington Evans. And he's a guy that I like quite a bit in this draft process. Had more of like a second round grade on him, so them being able to get him where they got him, I didn't think was bad work if they could get it. So when you look ahead to this year, you say, why should I be confident in the Tennessee Titans? Well, they've got a great running game. Absolutely great running game. Assuming Derrick Henry stays healthy, he's going to probably put up big numbers. Tannehill's a guy that can pick up some yards with his feet as well. I look at Evans or some other guys in that backfield should be able to come in and play some type of complementary role. You get another year of development for last year's first-round pick, Jeffrey Simmons, and last year's second-round pick, A.J. Brown. And obviously, A.J. Brown was everything you could have hoped for and asked for as a second-round wide receiver as a rookie. I'm not surprised he came in and played well as a rookie. And Jeffrey Simmons, this is a guy that they were able to get last year, later in round one, in part because of the knee injury. If he hadn't had the knee injury, he would not have been there. So now you got to be really excited if you're a Titans fan. What's he going to do in year two? A full year, potentially being healthy? This is an explosive athlete. Let's see if he can make explosive impact plays on that defensive line. And then you look at their defense and you say their run defense is really good. And bringing Clowney into the fold, certainly your run defense gets a little better. And then the pass rush, you talk about now you've got a young guy like Harold Landry still on the outside, another year of his development and getting better. Jadeveon Clowney you've brought in. Now you also talk about Jeffrey Simmons, like you could be looking at a pass rush that's even better in 2020 potentially. I'm a little hesitant to go all in on the Titans though, and there are a couple of reasons for why. Is when I look at that offense, just how much does Ryan Tannehill really bring to the table? You've now paid him a lot of money, and he was largely a game manager. And it's interesting. People will try to excuse that or defend that, but you don't want to pay superstar type money to like second or third rate guys. I'm sorry, it's just not a good formula for success. You see that happen, of course, in the NBA all the time. But the formula that you used as you got into the playoffs is not nearly as sustainable over a 16-game regular season. Like you can't play like you're hiding the quarterback. You can't play like you're scared to throw the ball. So you're going to have to get more out of Tannehill this year. And when you try to do that, what are you actually going to get out of him? And then you look at that passing game. Who are the playmakers in the passing game outside of A.J. Brown? Corey Davis, has been a huge disappointment for me. Certainly, I thought coming out of Western Michigan he was going to be the real deal, and he hasn't been. They declined his fifth-year option, so he's now in a contract year. Is he going to step up and be that type of dude? Based off of history, unfortunately, it's doubtful. Is Jonnu Smith going to be a big weapon at tight end? Who are the playmakers outside of A.J. Brown in that passing game? Who are the guys that are going to consistently get open and get those key first downs, make those big plays, be a downfield threat? I worry about that. And then how's that secondary going to hold up? If you look at this defense, that's still, to me, the weakness there. How are guys like Malcolm Butler and Dory Jackson going to do? Kevin Byard can only cover up but so much of that stench on the outside. I'm just saying. You can only get so much out of that safety. I think this is still a good team. I think this is a team that, you don't look at them and they don't wow you. They're not spectacular, but kind of almost strike you that gritty kind of hard-nosed team that scraps, fights, claws, scratches their way into position, and then once they get into the playoffs, if they manage to get in there, could potentially make a little bit of noise. It's kind of similar to what I see with them. Like I see this as a 9-7 type of football team. I don't see dramatic improvements made. I see them more as like a 9-7 type of football team. Not winning the division this year, just like they didn't last year, but being the type of team that if they got there and they got there with their horses relatively healthy, could once again make a little bit of noise in the playoffs.